Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me this morning for another episode of Friday Morning Chats with Angie. And just wanted to give you a little bit of a background here about my Friday morning chats. They're not going to be necessarily on mortgage related information. It's really the first couple episodes here are about us as human beings, us as small business owners, and how we're navigating through these times. COVID has caused chaos in a lot of our businesses, and not only chaos in our business, but also within our personal selves. So I found myself personally the last little bit, the first couple of weeks was almost like a vacation, almost euphoric to be home, do something different. But now as the days and weeks are rolling in and we're realizing that we're going to be in this for the long haul, there's really some bad habits that could be setting in. And this is for me personally. I've experienced bad eating. I haven't implemented a solid working out program. And my time is spent, because I don't want to spend too much time on the watching TV, because we're inside. We feel that that's our go-to activity. I've been spending so much time on the computer, reading emails, contacting my clients. So I'm giving so much to my clients. So anyhow, the morning chats have been about how to navigate through that. Today, my speaker and my co-host is my very, very close friend, Rosa Rago. And also she's I call her my mind, heart, and spirit mentor. So my go-to person when I need a little shake-up in putting me back on the right track. And also Rosa's been the person that a few years back really helped me still my mind and helped me on that road of what I'm calling positivity. That's a loaded word. And I wanted to share her with you because she's one of my dearest resources. So Rosa, thank you so much for joining me. This is a huge step for me to be on live here, so I appreciate you helping me through this just by being my guest. It's helping me practice. If you want to give the audience a bit of a background about yourself and what gives you the permission to talk about how we should be, living our lives positively, implementing some strategies that we're going to be talking about. Give us a little bit of a background on Rosa.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, and thank you to everyone who's here. I can't really see anyone, but if you comment and say hello, I can at least see your name and see who's active. So I see that there's Kim, Luigi, and Lori. So just a quick little bit of background, and you can always find out more background from me. There's a video I have on YouTube. But ultimately, hi, Mariana. Oh, it's Mariana. I know who she is. Am I saying it right, Mariana?
Yeah.
And so, long story short, I had a very tough upbringing, but I have an Italian background. So there's always a lot of love, but it was a tough upbringing, watching the way my father treated my mother. And it was an abusive upbringing. And it just got to the point where my parents basically had to divorce. And they struggled financially as well. So one of the things that I always desired growing up is just peace. I just wanted peace. There was no peace in my home, but yet there was a lot of love, but dysfunctional. And it got to the point where instead of turning to drugs or anything, I actually turned to school and my athletics. So I became an overachiever, which allowed me to run away and go to school in the States on a scholarship. Where I got to remove myself from the environment. And so I was in school in the States for 5 years, but in my 4th year, I never actually dealt with it. I never dealt with what I actually was what I was actually going through emotionally. And instead I just kept being an overachiever. And in 2 years, in a 2-year period, I got in 4 serious car accidents and 1 drowning experience. So obviously something was getting my attention. And the 4th car accident, I was a pedestrian. I got hit by a car, and I had a near-death experience. I was hospitalized. I have a metal plate in my arm. And that would be, I would say, one of the biggest turning points in my life where I found God. I found I was called, and my life took a total different turn. It's almost like I was in a momentum, and it just kind of hit me, and I went in a different direction. And slowly from there, I was headed on the right path, but I wasn't aware. And that's when things started to unfold for me, all because of this one point. And when I became aware of it, and I'll share that over in this conversation, when I became aware of it, I started to take control of my life more consciously, rather than it happened because of what happened to me. So I really see this pandemic as something where it's really just kind of stopped us in our tracks, and it's literally changed the trajectory of our life, which is not a bad thing. But it's in the state of where things are shaken up, and we literally have to learn about what our new normal is. There are things that we're considering that we otherwise wouldn't have considered with the momentum that we were going through. And there are things that what ended up happening, in fact, and not to make it sound like a negative thing, but the first 2 years after my car accident was the worst, because that's when everything started to surface, and I was forced to really face a lot of things that I never dealt with. So now combine that with the fact that the pandemic's also creating situations where, some of us are very limited to work. Some people they don't even have access to food and all that. This is just like an extreme situation. And so I definitely can, relate. I went through periods of depression, eating disorder, anything I can do to really regain control of my life in external ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it really came down to really helping me to find what I came down to realize ultimately was I didn't know how to be still. I didn't know how to just be still and be okay. So there was a phase where I didn't think it was me. I thought it was, well, I'm sad because I got hit by a car. Like I had all the logical reasons. I got hit by a car. I'm in pain, and look what's happened to me and everything like that. So easily we can point out logically why we're justified in what we're feeling. But in time, ultimately, we will realize that it really is exposing something deeper that is going on within us, and our deeper fears and how we actually deal with those. And so that moment has given me the tools to know how to face adversity, and basically how to adapt and tap into resources that allow me to even deal with something like a pandemic. And so I went through a deep process, it's 11/11, by the way. I went through a deep process of detachment. I thought I was an athlete. I thought there was a lot of identities that I was shedding. So it's no different than any other death. There's a point where we need to accept that there's going to be grieving that's going to happen. So the first thing really is just like coming to acceptance, and not doing more, but actually being okay with doing less, and being with whatever is there rather than trying to change it, because of what that will do for us in the long run. So yeah, I'll just kind of start there for now. But it did kind of lead me to what I do in meditation and all that stuff. But I was, again, forced, like we're all forced right now with the pandemic. I was forced on that journey 13 years ago. So.
Yeah, I'd love your perspective on, you mentioned something about the grievings. Mm-hmm. It literally is the whole process of grieving that we're going through, what was, and then finally getting to the point of acceptance of where we are today. And yes, perhaps that's where I am at the acceptance stage of, because I felt like I went through the sadness, the anger, and all of those stages, and now it's like, okay, it's been 6 weeks, enough already. Now what?
Yeah.
So walk us through that, and also the being still. That's key to the mindset.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is, so ultimately I was a survivor. So it took me 2 years. I was actually surviving. So I was physically limited. So I needed something extreme to stop me. And even when I pushed, I was in more pain. And so what I would say is just knowing that this is a phase. So it's actually a normal thing. So the pandemic, what it's done, it's really challenging us to reevaluate you know, our identity and where we place values, and if we really know who we are outside of all of that stuff, because we really are so much more than everything. And it's like, you think about, yeah, but what if our basic survival needs, like eating and all that? Yes, absolutely. But this is like an opportunity for us to exercise, you know, our faith, because what other choices do we have, right? So the phase of acceptance really comes in allowing it to be whatever it needs to be. So if there's anger, as long as we don't hurt other people, it's about not trying to be a hero and trying to be strong. Even in the language, when I say trying to be, there's nothing about who you are naturally that requires effort. Anything that requires effort is not authentic. So if you're angry, it's just allow it. If you're sad, allow it. If you're whatever it is, just allow it. And you know, just know that at first it's about the pandemic, but eventually it might be something more, because it exists in all of us to reach a state of stillness. And for some of us, it might take 4 weeks, sometimes some of us months, some of us years. But it can't be okay, I'm getting out of this because enough is enough. I just don't want to give that to myself. We really need to honor the time where we need to first go in and learn how to be gentle and nurture ourselves again. Okay. And, what happens is that when we do that, it allows us to release. And there is productive release. Like, it's not okay to, you know, be angry at someone or let it out on anyone. Rather, it's just important to, when we recognize that we're experiencing frustration or fear, to actually go and be with that emotion. We just need to be with it without trying to change it, making it wrong or anything. We just need to allow it to be there. Angie, you had a question?
Yeah. And when you say be with it, like, I totally understand what that means. I can, you know, go in a room and quiet myself, quiet my mind. I wanted you to also talk about how a strategy of how to be with it and how to be still. Because that in itself, I mean, it didn't save my life in that I was on a path of, you know, I was going to do something to myself or whatever, but it awakened my spirit, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely saved your life, because you wouldn't know where you'd be if you hadn't changed that trajectory, right?
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
So what I would say is, first, it's about what is the intention? What is the end goal, right? The end goal is ultimately for us to reach a level of stillness, because in a place of stillness is where all of our creation and inspiration comes. Right. And so the true end goal is for us to start to create and to be able to adapt and create from this space, because we have more time and all that. But there's too much noise. So the most important thing is to really get everything out and use that as an opportunity to learn more about ourselves. So what that would look like, there's 3 different ways you can do it. You could either have a committed listener. So have someone who's really, really, you really trust, and who's grounded in who you are at the core. Meaning, if you show a side of you where you're just raw and emotional, the next day they're not like, you're crazy. They really see you for who you are, and just allow you and give you the permission to experience the rawness of what you're feeling. Okay. So when you have a committed listener, you're able just to talk out loud and get it out. And express it. But the thing is, with a committed listener, you usually want someone who's actually gone through this experience themselves, because a committed listener will be very intentional with how they work through it with you. They might say things, they're not going to try to fix you. Like, I know parents do that a lot. It's like, well, just feel happier, or what can I do? And they try to fix it. It's not someone fixing it. It's just someone who's providing a sounding board and sometimes probing questions to help you go deeper. So it's like, oh, I'm just so angry, like on my job and this and that or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, you know, what do you feel angry about? Well, I feel angry, whatever. And just asking questions like, how does that make you feel? And just questions that are more introspective, and so that you can actually come to understand your emotions, come to understand what it is that you really need. So the end goal is use your emotions, your sadness, whatever it is that you're going through, the emotions you're going through, use it as an opportunity to inquire and ask yourself, and show interest and show compassion towards yourself. And if it's hard to do that, you can use a committed listener who can role model or reflect that back to you, so you understand that experience. Another way you can do that is by getting a video or an audio recording and just venting and saying everything you feel. Because what you'll notice is that when you just express what you feel, sometimes you don't even know what you're saying. But if you keep saying it, there's a discovery that comes in that, where you're like, if you just keep going and going, by the end of the expression, you'll come to discover something. Okay. And then when you do it on video and audio, what's cool about that is when you go back to listen to and watch it, you'll notice you resonate differently with it. It's almost like you're a different person seeing it. And we're all good at helping other people, but when it comes to helping ourselves, it's always a little different. We can't see ourselves. So this also provides you an opportunity to see yourself outside of yourself. So I think video recording and audio recording is fantastic. And then another thing is just journaling, just writing a lot, writing. And so you notice that when I talk about this and I said like the ultimate goal is to get to stillness, you know, a lot of people may struggle to meditate because like there's too much noise. Well, sure, there's so much noise because just to be still right now might not be the thing. Right now, you just need to be heard. You need to be self-expressed. So self-expression is key. And before self-expression can happen, there needs to be trust. There needs to be trust and there needs to be vulnerability, right? And so if we don't have trust in the space with ourselves, we won't be vulnerable. And if we're not vulnerable, we'll just keep it at a surface level emotion, like angry, angry, angry. But it's like, what are you really feeling? Like, I'm just really afraid of my future. Like, what if, you know, ultimately, do you not believe in yourself? Do you have faith in yourself? Do you feel secure and confident in yourself and knowing that you can get through this? It's like, what do you really, let's talk this through, right? So when you have this conversation with yourself or with a person, a committed listener, it helps to cultivate a space of trust. Okay. And when we finally feel like we're in a space of trust and we can be vulnerable and self-expressed, eventually the self-expression evolves. It goes from emotions to deeper understanding to compassion. And then next thing you know, it evolves naturally to so many things. And eventually we start to self-express ourselves through cooking, through these things that maybe we're still doing, but they're tasks. Now all of a sudden you're finding joy in cleaning the house or whatever. It's just a form of self-expression. So
I just want to take a second and see if there's anybody wants to jump in or has any questions or comments. And feel free anytime just to write in the chat and then we can, you know, monitor it and get back to you. Rosa, what if you don't have a committed listener? I mean, I love journaling, you know, and I can't say I've been consistent with it, but when I do, it does help me. Would just journaling, do you need the 3 to?
So ultimately it comes down to your reality, like what you feel, right? And so the main question is, do you feel like you have support? Do you feel safe, right? Because if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel you have support, and that feeling could just be toward yourself, like you don't feel you support yourself, you don't feel like you trust yourself, right? You can go through the motions of journaling, but it's not a space where you're actually feeling supported, right? Like think about when you talk to someone, you're trying to tell them how you feel and they're like, yeah, right? You're still expressing, but you don't feel like they're really listening. They're not listening to you, right? But when you really feel like someone's hearing you, when you express yourself to someone who you really feel cares about you, there's a difference in your expression. Right? So you got to create that environment. So the main thing is environment. I think you said last week, you guys talked about environment, like in your office, but number one key thing, if I had to give you something practical, like an actionable step, is I would say, start creating an environment within yourself through your opinion of yourself and through how you are with yourself and just around you. Start creating an environment that feels like safe for you. Okay. But the thing is, if you feel like, no, I don't feel like I have anybody, I don't feel like I can trust him, I don't have any support whatsoever. Okay. Because I'm thinking to myself a time when I was at my lowest low, like I was convinced I had no one, I was alone. And no matter how much you express, if you don't feel like you're being heard, then it's not going to do anything. So it's not just about self-expression, but it's really feeling like you're being heard. And this is where, if you really feel like it's gotten to that point where you really don't believe that you are supported, then it's really probably been a long time that you felt that way. And I would really ask yourself is how honest are you being when it comes to really being vulnerable? Because everyone has at least one person. And we may say, no, like I can't talk to my mom, or they judge me all the time. But it's like, that's probably calling on for you to really be a bit more vulnerable about something. And ultimately, when you start to really cultivate that relationship with yourself, you'd be amazed how people change in the way that they treat you. Right? When you start to, so starting with yourself, starting with something greater than you, whether it's you have a faith, a prayer or whatever, but not to just pray, just journal. Don't just do it. Really ask yourself, do you actually feel like you're being heard? That's so important. Right. And so I'm not sure, did I end up answering your question? What was the question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could, like you had the three, like the committed listener, the auto recording and the journaling. Yeah. And let's say we don't have that committed listener, will we still have the benefit of if we just do the audio recording, obviously? Yes. Most of us have access to now.
Yes.
But you know, sometimes when you're at the beginning phases, you may not want to express this. You might be fearful to express it, fearful of judgment and all the rest of it. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I look at the list of people who are here. I can pick up the phone at any time and know that any one of these people are going to will be my committed listener, 100%.
Yes.
But I think that's because I come from a place of that I am vulnerable, and I already know that I'm not. I wouldn't be judged. By any of these people, and I hope they feel the same, that they can count on me for the same. But there are people out there who don't have that and are afraid to take that first step. Right?
So, and here's the thing is, I'm a believer that we all have access to the support. And what I would say is, however, if we're in a phase where we are believing like that's our reality, we know I don't have someone. I mean, like you wouldn't be on this Zoom call if you didn't believe you didn't, right? So, but let's just say someone is really in a space we don't believe, then their eyes are not going to see the opportunities where they can, because they've already closed themselves off. So it's a difference between being closed and being open, or staying stuck in the victim side of things. And we are justified as victims. Like we actually are victims of pandemic. This is actually happening. What I mean by victim is just about only wanting to focus on how there's a problem and not being open to just accepting the problem. I'm not saying fix the problem, but just the first step is to accept that there's a problem. That's the first level of opening. And so, you know, you'll notice things that's like, I'm sure everyone can relate to this, is, you know, when you go through life and as you get older, you're like, that's weird. Like, this was there, but I never noticed that before. Or how come this book was around for 10 years and only now I'm reading it, right? So it really comes from a readiness. So assuming someone's finally ready and then they're really like, okay, Rosa, now what are the steps? At that point, when you're finally ready, you're always provided for. You'll meet the randomest person. You'll have a random friend call you. It works out that way. And if you don't have anything coming in that represents support, it's because it's actually starting within you. You need to allow yourself to open up a little bit more. And why is it that there's some people who exist who really don't believe they have support? Because justifiably so, they've gone through so much trauma that there is no trust. They don't even trust anymore. And so for those, you know, people who are in that place, like I really have a lot of compassion, but ultimately they are they are the ones who are in charge of opening that door. No one can do it for them. So, so, you know, you can, as soon as you open that door, you've just acted out of self-worth. Like, I'm worthy of receiving something. And by simply doing that, you for yourself and who you're being for yourself, you've already cultivated a space of a little bit of trust. And you can build from there, but you can be the committed listener for yourself. You can journal and all that stuff. And what happens when you really start to stand in a space of trust, it's amazing what you'll do. You'll like journal, but you'll hear like other voices that are yours, or maybe like outside of your own, where it feels like you're being guided. It feels like someone saying, you know, call Angie, or, you know, or go to check your email, or go do this, and you do something. Next thing you know, you bump into something you needed to hear, or something you need to look at, right? So it really starts with opening yourself up to receiving the support that's already available to you that you cannot connect to.
And Kelly says here, your energy attracts your tribe.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. And ultimately it starts with you. So again, if you're feeling like you don't have support, ask yourself, do you support yourself? You don't feel like you trust anybody, do you trust yourself?
yeah,
Right? So
yeah.
it really starts off with you. Now, once you've actually started to self-express, you'll find yourself feeling more complete. And what I mean by complete is that anytime we're going through any hardship and we're not dealing with it well, it's actually showing us that we're in it, we haven't overcome it. So there's something that we're not fully complete with, right? And
Yeah.
so it's important to understand that if we were really complete, and what I mean by that is, let's just say, for example, something happened to you a long time ago and you regretted it, that you made a decision and you're like, damn it, you just, whatever it is that you are regretful of it, that regret will play out in your life in so many ways.
Yeah.
So the pandemic is going to surface deeper things that you're not fully complete with within yourself, whether there's things that you've regretted or whether there's things that you are still angry about. That's going to show, because if you've come to peace with things and you've completed them, when you go through a situation, you would deal with it for what it is. Right? A lot of the things that make us feel like there's no way out is really, let's just say we're struggling financially and all that stuff, right? Well, it's likely that level, that reality of scarcity, never feeling like you have enough money, or always feeling afraid of that, of not having enough money. Mm-hmm. That probably was there the whole time. Right? And now put yourself in a situation, it's like you're facing a greater fear that was there the whole time, but it was never really kind of dealt with. So you were never really fully complete in feeling that.
And this time right now in the pandemic is heightening those fears, because now we are, in a sense, I mean, we've got our family or whoever's in the house. Some of us are totally on their own, but the alone time, and if we don't know how to use that alone time in being still, mm-hmm. as I know, the mind, and as Joyce has mentioned, the mind can start to ruminate in a negative way, take us on a different path, and those reminders, like you said, that were there all along, become mm-hmm. bigger and grander.
Yes.
I want us to get into
and I actually have something to say about the ruminating thing.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest lessons and one of the biggest things that I've learned, and it goes to the whole like feeling heard. If there's ever anyone who ruminates and who continue to go, because no emotion could ever go into, when heard, could ever go into something negative. And what I have found is, this is very common with like parents for children, or people who are solutions oriented, who are leaders, natural leaders. When dealing with, say, when in the space with someone else who's ruminating, if you will, in an emotion, we relate to them from our perspective and say, well, if I was going through, I was doing, and we try to provide solutions and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which causes this person to be constantly perceived as that they're, again, ruminating more and more. And you're just like, you clearly see the problem. But just like someone says here, is like energy flows where your focus goes. So what happens is that someone who might be stuck in an emotion, they're actually set up for, they're set up for failure, because everyone wants to solve their problems. And it's like, the best way to solve a person's problem is just listen to them. Don't make them wrong with the way they thought process. Agree with the things they say. I just feel as, what, you're right, it is hard. Yeah, and I just, it's not, because when you don't give them something to fight back, it gives them something to just kind of be at peace with. And it's the same thing as when I say, when you're having an emotion, just accept it, just be with it, don't try to fix it. We don't do that a lot for each other and for ourselves, because we lack the muscle of patience and compassion to be able to endure someone who's in a state of emotion. It's very rare that we can actually endure and go through it. Right? And there is a way in which we can go through it where we can build the muscle of greater love just by simply being really good, empathetic listeners and just listen. It's clear if a person is ruminating, it's clear that they're not wanting a solution. They just need to be heard. And I promise you, when they finally experience that they're heard, something will happen to them that will feel awkward because they don't know what that experience is like. They've probably been told their whole life that they're negative, this and that. And then sometimes what happens is that then they start to believe they're negative. So like, screw it, I'm just going to talk because, I don't want to be a negative person. So now we relate to being freely expressing your emotions as a negative thing. And so it really takes a person who's really done the work to really provide that level of that experience for someone who's really never knew how to get out of the emotion without being told. Because when they're being given a solution, all they hear is that there's something wrong with them and they're stupid and they're not good enough and they're wrong. So it's about really understanding that no one would actually ruminate for that long if they were given an experience of being validated and heard. They wouldn't. And then what happens is that in that space, trust would be built. Then once you have trust, you are in a position to set boundaries and say, you know what, can I share something? You ask for permission. Yeah. For the past 20 days, I've been hearing that you've been struggling this and that and all that. And I totally hear you. And you know that you've been providing them with just a genuine listening. And this is where you can set boundaries and say, if a person's coming to you constantly venting and just say, and I do this a lot, it's like, what is it that are you speaking because you just want to be heard, or is it because you want a solution out of it? What's your intention? And then you'll realize, oh, I don't have an intention there. I'm speaking this just to speak. Right. And so it helps them to kind of see themselves, but first earn the trust, first endure and just allow them to just express. But again, for us to authentically be that for someone else, we got to be able to endure and be with the stuff that we're dealing with ourselves. Yeah. So the reality is, do people really do that for each other? And do they really do that authentically? Not really. We probably just stop answering phone calls like, oh, there's that person, they're just going to vent again. But really, if you really do that for yourself, you'll find yourself to be able to have an infinite source of love to give someone so unconditionally that when you don't give it to them, it's just a matter of like time is finite and you just are not so available to them by time. Right. So it's really important to understand, not to try to fix someone's problems, but just give them that space. Right. There's so much healing that happens in that space that is unspoken and unseen.
I love it. I know a few years back and, we had a struggle in the family. We had a family member that was not well. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned as a mother, and something that I've taken and able to provide for friends outside of our immediate family is to just listen. I remember I was feeling frustrated when I was calling people to say, just to, vent on the situation that was happening at home, and people chiming in saying, did you do this? Did you do that? Well, how about this? And how about that? And it became really frustrating for me. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I was that person with my family member saying, how about this? How about that? How about this? Mm-hmm. Thankfully, at the time, I was doing a self-love, which I want to talk more about with you, Rosa, self-love, mm-hmm. and how that propels us in everything that we do. The self-love practice had taught me to be still and to just be with that person, just be with mm-hmm. ourselves and be with that person. It was the biggest lesson, because as a talker, I do talk a lot, and I'm the first one. Was that?
You're very expressed.
I'm very expressed, but I had to learn that when was a good time to be that expressive and when was a good time to be a listener. And being a listener was my biggest lesson over the last little bit. Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I want to ease into now self-love, mm-hmm. How that creates that positive mindset that we all need right now. Mm-hmm. I need that reminder. I told you that yesterday on the phone. I've been great, and then the last little while I decided I just want to be a slug. And I say just wanted, I decided that because if I didn't decide that, then I'd still be doing my practice.
Yeah.
So yeah, so self love. We have a couple comments here. Just want to make sure. Um, Kelly states, Kelly, do you want to pipe in here? I don't know how to put
Hearing
her
someone
in.
is involuntary, truly listening to someone is an intentional act. Exactly. So
Yeah.
it takes a real, intentional, a loving intention to actually truly listen to someone and not actually have a single opinion about them. Right. And just to listen to literally be a space holder is what you call it.
Yeah. And Joyce saying, me too. I don't know how to turn.
Yes, people. Me too. I'm a slug. Yeah. So Joyce is
Oh,
saying,
she's a
yes,
slug.
yes, people got it. So yes, people are sick of me. Me too. I'm a slug. So here's the thing that I would say is by the time it becomes a behavior or an action, it's never really the behavior or the action. That's the thing that you want to control. And I use the word control strategically because that's a lot of the things that we'll do is we wait till we see something with our eyes, like logically, it's like, oh, I'm eating like shit or whatever. And we look at the behavior and then we're like, well, I shouldn't do that. And we try to control the behavior.
And then you feel worse. You feel guilty.
Yeah, then you feel worse, you feel guilty. So it really is important to understand that there is energy or there is emotions that drive our actions and behaviors. And if we really go to the root of it, we can find ourselves being more consistent with our actions and our behaviors if we really get down to the core of what's kind of going on. And so ultimately, to keep it simple, and what I teach in the self-love workshop, there's only two emotions in life, and that's what they teach in Chinese medicine. There's love and fear. Okay. Everything else is a subcategory. So anger, all that stuff is an emotion of fear, envy, and all that stuff. And then we have like patience and compassion, and all that is love. Right. And again, like I reference for myself, I reference God, whatever it is, higher power, something bigger than you. Okay. We have access to an infinite source. And what I mean by infinite, it means it never ends. And when we are fueled by love, we function from an infinite source. When we're fueled by fear, we hit burnout, where we can only be driven to do what's right for us through motivation, external factors. But when we're connected to love, we're fueled, we're in spirit, we're inspired, we're fueled by the love. And now the eating healthy, the exercising, the making the choices that serve you is just a result of you being in a space of love. Okay. So what happens is I always tell it's like, I would much rather you eat the cake and not feel guilty. But the fact that you feel guilty and then you're making yourself wrong for it, like it really is exposing how you treat yourself when you're out of integrity, because as human beings, we're always going to be out of integrity. And while we thrive and strive and want to be integral, because that's what's going to allow us to really feel fulfilled within ourselves, it's important to understand that the part of you that's judging yourself is the problem, right? It's that in itself is not coming from a space of love. So there's, it needs to be that you need to understand, why is it that you want to eat healthy? Why do you want to exercise? Why do you want to do these things? And if it's because I should, or if it's because of what you don't want, like I don't want to be fat, or I don't want to feel like shit, or I don't, listen to your language about what you're connecting to the true motivator behind that. And other than the fact that it should just simply be, it just is. It's what I feel. I feel like I want to eat salad. I'm craving. I want it. Well, then that's how you know in your space of love. But if you're like, I feel like eating shitty food, I'm trying to control and eat my calories, that'll last 2 or 3 months, but you're going to lose that. It's never going to be long lasting. It really comes with really getting yourself in a space of love and allowing that fuel to, believe me, when you're full of love, your soul wants things from Mother Nature. It doesn't want crappy food. It wants healthy things. Yeah. So I would ask that instead of feeling guilty, to shift yourself to a curiosity. It's like, why is it that I'm craving sugar? Why is it that, so just start to open up the dialogue and be open to, and interested in why is it that you're craving, and there's something in you that's craving something. And what you'll notice is that maybe you just recently got in an argument with your husband. Maybe, like pay attention to the last few things that happen, and you may realize, interesting, every time I have an argument with my husband, you know, I do that every time I'm bored, every time you start to make connections on when you what's actually really coming before the actual crave, if you will.
I see, I'm not sure, but Luigi has his hand up here. I don't know how long ago that was. So if I'm going to allow him to talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Luigi.
Yes.
Hey, I see that you had
Hi, how are you?
Here. Good. How are you? Thank you for joining us. Did you have your hand up? And
No, I don't think I did. But I have to say that I've taken a lot from this conversation. I think it's awesome to have you to listen to you speak, Rosa. I think you're an inspiration.
Thanks, Luigi.
I've taken a lot of things away from this that I'm definitely gonna start to do some introspection on myself. So
amazing, beautiful, beautiful. And not to take anything away from women, but I really, really honor you to as a man to really step in and be open and to take this on is beautiful. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Luigi. Rosa, it's 11:44 and I jumped on Zoom at 5 to 2. So we've got like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I have Joyce is saying, are there any books that you could recommend? I want to recommend mine, but it's not published yet. But what I would recommend is, it all depends on what phase you're in. So based on what we talked about, I mean, I think Joyce, I'm assuming that you also are part of your gift is that you are humor and you have sarcasm. I'm just going to assume by what I'm kind of receiving from here.
Yeah, Joyce, you can speak, hon.
And so
I think unmute.
Yeah. So it says here, you know, okay. So a lot of the comments here, you know, Joyce, that you're saying like, you know, people are sick of me or me too, I'm a slug, but I don't really receive it as you really being mean to yourself when you're doing that. You're kind of saying jokes, but with a little bit of truth. And so, you have to unmute her. Okay. Got it. So what I would say is, first of all, I hope that you're not always, first of all, I hope you're not always like that with yourself. Okay. If that was the truth where you actually have an opinion yourself of, yeah, people are sick of me and everything like that. You know, with every joke, there's always like a little bit of a truth. So you probably found a way to kind of find humor around that. So hold on to the humor because that's positive. But what I would say is words have energy. And words are very, very powerful. And so limit the times that you, like if it's something, this is on your own, it could be personal. Oh, all of a sudden she can't hear anything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. She can hear the recording though, right?
Yeah, she'll hear the recording. Sorry, Joy.
Okay. So I would say like words are very, very powerful and they carry an energy and they carry 7% of the energy of our intention. Our tone carries 38% and our body language carries 55%. So it's just important to understand that if you're in a place, Joyce, where you feel like you really struggle, just kind of, you kind of like shrug things off with a bit of humor, but you really struggle with being vulnerable with yourself. What I would highly recommend, which book to, what to do, not even a book, but what I would highly recommend to get into are anything to do with like dancing, or singing or something that helps to allow yourself to be a bit more or to do something that you've never really done that you feel like may embarrass you. Or what you could do is also something like if you're I'm not sure, Joyce, are you married? Is she married?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. And also notice the patterns in your language. As your language is tied to the emotions that you could have possibly created an addiction. Yes, absolutely. So your language exposes your subconscious in the way that you word it. So there's just some things I'm picking up, Joyce, with your choices of language. Well, I know the intention is humor. There's just a little bit of like an opinion about yourself there. So what I would recommend is doing things that help you to really find like discover who you are, whether it's art, whether it's some sort of expression, and find ways to really see and explore what is it that you're really good at. Do you know about, could you confidently say, you know what, I'm a great artist, or, you know, this is what I'm good at. And I find people who don't like to acknowledge themselves or kind of shrug on and kind of play joke really struggle to say what it is that they feel like they're good at. So just simply starting to, it's regarded as arrogant, or it's regarded as, you know, you shouldn't be that way, or for whatever reason. So start to actually exercise the part of you that's a bit more convicted in who you believe yourself to be, that is truly who you are, right? Otherwise, you're just keeping things superficial, and the surface of that, it's really going to feel like unfulfilling. Another thing, what I would recommend is a book called Anatomy of the Spirit.
Oh yeah.
If Angie hasn't told you guys about that. Anatomy of the Spirit is amazing to help you to understand how to connect your bodily experiences with your emotions. So when you're angry, you're upset, if you really allow yourself to stop and experience an emotion, you'll realize it's actually an experience that's happening in your body. So when I told you guys first just to be within, Angie, you're like, well, what does that look like? What that looks like is, first, it requires self-awareness. If you're justifying why you're angry, then you're still in the reaction phase. But if you're aware enough to be like, whoa, I'm really angry. Whoa, I'm really sad. Whoa, like I'm feeling jealousy, or whoa, I'm feeling a trigger. Like if you can actually see it outside of yourself and acknowledge that you have it, it requires self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Once you do that, close your eyes and locate, you can even put your hand, locate where you're experiencing it. Where do you experience the emotion? And you'll always notice you experience it in a certain part of your body, okay? And then breathe into that area, and it's called transmuting. What you'll actually realize is that it'll actually go away just by you breathing into it in the actual area where you're experiencing it, okay? And what's happening is that these are just patterns from the past that keep wanting to come up because they're being triggered by, you know, certain, you know, whatever it is that you might see. Like if you had trauma with, if you're a woman, you had trauma with men in the past, you know, just looking at a man might trigger that emotion right away, right? And so it helps you to interrupt those patterns, to breathe through them, and it allows the love that you're being to the emotion to heal what's there. So essentially, it helps you to do that. And the Anatomy of the Spirit talks about the different parts of our body and what we store in our emotions. So anything related to scarcity or safety, anything that the pandemic is doing, is all related to our hips, low back, our legs, our knees, that kind of stuff. So if you're noticing that you're really struggling with feeling safe and you're feeling scarce, you may notice that it's starting to manifest physically in these areas. Okay. The Anatomy of Spirit also talks about in the heart is where we harbor a lot of resentment. And this is where forgiveness needs to be. So again, if there's a lot of stuff going on in here, it's more so about understanding that there's a lot of resentment that we're holding on to here. Okay. Shoulder pain is also connected to the throat and the heart. So the book will literally tell you what emotion is connected to your physical injuries and all that stuff. So that's a great way for you to start to, get interested in your emotions and actually use this as an activity to learn about yourself rather than making your emotions wrong, just to start learning about them and start really building that relationship with yourself. I guarantee if you do this for like 30 days straight, it's impossible not to fall more deeply in love with yourself. And I don't mean that in a way where you're full of yourself. I mean that in a way where you truly remember the innocence from which you came from, and you truly remember, you know, the purity from which you have come from. It's impossible not to experience that when you really allow yourself to care and show that level of compassion and just acceptance for yourself.
Rosa, let me just see what this question is. Nice, beautiful. Thank you, choices. Just being cognizant of the time and what we have left here and everyone's busy schedule. Mm-hmm. We've got a few minutes here. A couple of things I wanted to end with. One is a lot of people struggle with the diaphragmatic breathing. You can just, because you said, you know, be still and breathe.
Yes.
Breathing is key. So you can quickly just take us through breath and what we need to do. Okay. And second thing is, I do want to wrap up with what's coming up for you and the exciting meditations and that you're taking online. So I do want everyone with that.
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing to do is, first of all, I would have to know, but I can normally say by a show of hands, is you need to know what the diaphragm actually looks like. So when you close your eyes and you go into your body and you communicate with your body and you're trying to get structures to move and you're breathing into it, visualization is key. So it's important that we all know that what the diaphragm looks like is a dome. It's literally a dome that sits like this, but it three-dimensionally in our bodies. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when it's relaxed, it's like a dome. So when you inhale, it flattens, but it's a circle. So it expands you outwards all the way around. And when you exhale, it domes again. Okay. So now you can associate and connect with every inhale, what's happening to your diaphragm, and every exhale, what's happening with your diaphragm. And the best thing I could do is, I know that I can share screen real quick. So I'll do this quickly. It totally changes the game when you actually connect to the diaphragm, to the image, okay? So what you need to know is, what's a good picture here that we got here? Perfect. I'm gonna use this one. Okay. So if I share the screen with you, do you guys see this here? Okay. This is what the actual diaphragm looks like. Okay. So it's literally a dome. So you can imagine if this flattens out, it's going to create more space in here. So your chest is going to expand. The sides of your rib cage is going to expand. Even behind you from the back, it's going to expand outwards. And if it's, all of this is going to flatten, it's going to push more air in your stomach. So your stomach is going to get bigger. Okay. And what I find is when people do some breathing, what I noticed, I'm not sure how to end the share here. There it is. What I noticed is that our breathing is backwards. So we inhale and our stomach goes in.
Yeah.
So first of all, it's important to understand that your stomach needs to go out. Okay.
Mine's
However,
out, Rosa.
Huh?
Too much eating. Mine's already out. Too much eating.
Yeah. So you want to place your hands just below your solar plexus and just put your hand there. And it's not about inhaling and then pressing physically your stomach out. It's about imagining the breath coming in and imagining the diaphragm flattening and letting the breath push your stomach out rather than pressing your stomach out. And I can always watch and see, like, I can always tell when someone's doing it where they're just breathing and then pushing their stomach out, or where they're allowing the breath to push the stomach out. Okay. And if you're really tight, it might just not push out any as much, which is fine. Okay. So what we're going to do is, I do this exercise where you do it in different positions. You want to first start with lying on your back with your knees bent. Okay. So your feet are flat on the ground. And then I start go on the stomach, then we do in a seated position, then we do a bent over position, then we do a standing position. So if we were all to be lying down on our back, I would ask, always close your eyes so that you can start to visualize your diaphragm and actually feel the structures that exist inside of you. Because believe it or not, while we have a heart, most of us don't actually feel it. While we have intestines, we don't feel it. If you really think about it, you actually are numb to experiencing things that are actually existing inside of you, right? And so what you want to do is, with the image that you saw on there in the anatomy, maybe study it for a little longer. Try to see if you can actually feel your diaphragm, which sits right below your rib cage. So go ahead and close your eyes and really try to feel the rib cage, see the dome, feel it. Just as you're breathing, it's not actually, it's not flattening maximally, because you're just doing a light breathing right now, okay? But we're going to take a nice deep breath in. And when you do, imagine the diaphragm pushing down and filling your stomach. And then the second phase of your breath, imagine the sides of your ribcage widening. And on the third phase of your breath, imagine now your upper chest rising to your chin. And then as you exhale, your upper chest falls down, the sides of your ribcage close in, and your stomach pulls in. Okay. But when we exhale, we're going to exhale through our nose, and we're going to do that for 10 seconds, which is very difficult for most people. And do it for 10 seconds while pulling your belly button in towards your spine. So it's like it's almost like you're sucking in as you're blowing through your nose. Okay. So let's just try that. So Angie, you'll notice when you breathe, you go and you lift your shoulders up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So put your hands on your stomach. Okay. And just very soft inhale through your nose. Feel your stomach come up, then feel the size of your rib cage expand, then feel your upper chest rise. Hold that breath. And now put your finger on your belly button. And for 10 seconds slowly, you're going to exhale. And as you're doing that, feel the belly button getting drawn towards your spine. 4, 3, 2. and 1. And again, inhale through your stomach. Visualizing the diaphragm actually pressing down. And exhale for 10, 9, 7, 6. Your belly button's drawing in, drawing in, drawing in, drawing in, drawing in. And again, take a deep breath in through your stomach. Feeling the sides of your ribcage expand, feeling your upper chest rise. Hold that breath. And exhale, pull the navel into your spine. 10, 9, 8, 7. Keep exhaling. 4, 3, 2, and 1. And again, and you just repeat that for like 10 reps, okay? And you want to pace how you exhale, and you'll actually notice yourself literally shift in your mind. And all of a sudden, something you're looking at, you look at something, a situation, all of a sudden you're a new person looking at the situation, therefore you're going to have a new way of looking at it and change your path. And this is why it's also important not to try to fix problems with people. The best thing you can do is ask someone, say, it's okay, like put your hand on them, get them to get present. They're not present. They can't hear you, right? So when you do some breathing, it shifts that pattern a little bit, and then you can feel a bit more centered in how you deal with things, okay?
Thanks, Rosa.
So, and as far as what's coming out, actually, I was telling you, I'm going to be providing I have a self-love meditation, and I also have a stretch and mobility program that I'm offering for free that I'm going to be posting soon. So if you're following me on my Facebook or my Instagram, if you're following me there, when I post it,
what's your handle, Rosa? What's your handle? So they all know. What's your,
my handle, is that what you call it? Just Rosa Rago. Look up Rosa Rago on my Facebook or my Instagram. I am Rosa Rago. And in May, when I start announcing the free stretching and mobility program, the meditation, all you got to do is just click the link, and then you can get it, get the download. Yeah. So I'd highly recommend the just basic breathing, stretching, and integrating that into your practice.
That's awesome. We're at almost at 11.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous. I didn't realize, you
mean 12.
Oh, 12. Yes. I thought, how are we going to fill the hour? And of course, this was a great topic, and we were able to. So I appreciate everyone being on. Does anyone have any questions before we head out for the day? Victoria says that we'll send out an email with Rosa's information for sure.
Okay. Yeah, cool, for sure. I mean, we could have talked about this forever, but yeah. So I hope that you guys got something out of it. If anybody needs more clarity on anything, again, when Victoria sends out the email, just ask whatever questions. I'd be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, so awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much. Any questions before we head out? No? Rosa, thank you. Thank you so much for
Thanks, Angie.
always being there for me and my family. So honored that I was able to introduce you to some of my closest friends and people I do business with. I hope that they found value in this as well. And I see some thank yous and XOXs. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Angie. Thanks, guys, for your time. Have a good day.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.